And happy 4th of July weekend to you all. I hope it was full of family and friends and grilling and real fireworks, not the stuff you can buy at Target, but the stuff that was going off over my house last night, those ones. If we have not met before, my name is Eli, and I run our groups here at Westbridge. I have an interesting story for you this morning. 4 years ago, this very weekend, my family and I moved to St. Michael, and we entered the doors of Westbridge for the very first time. I think we have a picture of what we looked like back then. Aw, you guys can say aw. Look at that. Look at that guy. He's loyal and he's handsome, protector. I'm talking about my dog. The other guy, that other guy, he still has two very strong Achilles, two very strong femurs, and has no idea what's about to happen this next 4 years. If you've known my family at all, you know we've grown since then. And before I show you this next picture, just want to give you a disclaimer. Winter photo shoots are great in theory, but the result is this. Everybody was crying in that picture. Like, stop, just smile and we can get in the van. So that is us now. Before we moved to St. Michael, Ashley and I had been praying that we would find a church where we could lay down our roots and raise our family in. Little did we know how dangerous of a prayer that would turn out to be. My wife Ashley and I were raised in churches our whole lives and attended some amazing churches. But when we left Westbridge that day, we both looked at each other and said, I feel like things are different. I think that's what church is supposed to be like. That afternoon, Jeremiah sent me a Facebook message, and it said something like this. It was nice seeing you again. Would love to grab a beer with you sometime and catch up on life. Pastors can drink beer? Our minds were blown. Now, that might make Ashley and I sound like we have a drinking problem, and I don't think we do. But we've attended some churches that sometimes they put the rules of Christianity over the personal relationship with God. And that's when we realized Westbridge would become our home. And life was good and calm and very comfortable. Then that fall, my phone rang and it was Jeremiah. Now, I'd like to think that I did what all of you would have done if your pastor calls you on a Friday afternoon on your way home from work, and I sent him straight to voicemail. When I mustered up the courage to listen to the voicemail, it was something pretty innocent. It just said something like, hey, dude, just got a quick question for you. Call me when you have a second. When I got home, I talked to Ashley about the voicemail. I told her, you don't think Jeremiah wants to talk to me about a job, do you? And we laughed and we laughed and we laughed and we laughed for like way too long of a time. We laughed. My suspicions were confirmed when I called Jeremiah back and he asked me how I liked my current job. And that should have been my first clue that a trap was being set. I loved my job. I worked for an awesome Christian man, and I felt very confident in what I was doing. I was making good money. I had just bought my big house in St. Michael that had everything but the white picket fence. And life was good and calm and comfortable. Meeting after meeting, Jeremiah's pitch would never change. He would say, I think God's taking Westbridge somewhere special, and I'd like for you to be a part of that. Be part of something bigger than yourself. Meeting after meeting, Ashley and I would do our best to convince Jeremiah and Cherry that we weren't as perfect as they might think. That actually didn't take as much convincing as we thought it would. We would stress our imperfections and tell them we felt unqualified and unworthy of working at a church. Because you guys know, only perfect people who have everything figured out can work at a place like this. Have you ever tried to tell your pastor you're unqualified or unworthy of what you're being called to do? It was almost like Jeremiah knew the Bible was full of examples of the unqualified and the unworthy being used for God's plan. Now, I was talking to a buddy about taking a job at Westbridge, and he told me about something called the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome is an overwhelming feeling that convinces you that you're not as intelligent or creative or talented as you might seem, accompanied by the fear that one day you'll be exposed as a fraud. This can often lead to something called downshifting. Downshifting is when you revise your goals to become less ambitious, which in turn prevents you from fulfilling your true potential. I kept telling my friend I was unqualified and unworthy of taking a job at a church. But he would push back and say, I'd be more worried if you did feel qualified and worthy. But still, I wanted to stay exactly where I was, because there things were good and calm and comfortable. But without even noticing, I had slipped into complacency, spiritually, relationally, with my wife and kids, and physically. I wasn't being challenged, and as a result, I had stopped growing. So we prayed, and we talked to friends, and we talked to family about this job, and everybody seemed to come to the conclusion before me. Taking this job would be the right move for our family. But I wish I could say I answered that call without hesitation, like the great Bible characters, like Noah who built the ark, or Moses who led the Israelites out of Egypt, or David who defeated Goliath. I wish I could say here today that I jumped without hesitation, but the fear of change and the challenge to leave my comfort zone had left me paralyzed. Instead, I acted more like Jonah. If you were a kid who grew up in church, you probably remember the story of Jonah and the whale. And when I was a kid in Sunday school, it was Jonah and the whale. So save me the it's a big fish, all right? I've caught big fish, and that would be an even bigger miracle. So I think we can all agree that it's Jonah and the whale, and Pluto's still a planet. Here's a recap for you for the book of Jonah. Jonah was called by God to go to Nineveh and tell the people there to repent. But instead, he jumped on a ship and went the complete opposite direction. Jonah was caught in a storm, he was thrown overboard, and he was swallowed by a whale. He cries out to God, and the whale spits him out on land, and Jonah realizes he can't run from his fears and fulfills what God has called him to do. Now, people have debated for years whether this is some type of religious allegory or true story or not, and I can confidently tell you that Jeremiah has the best answer I have ever heard and will be in the lobby after the service to take those questions. One of my takeaways from this story is you can't run from what you're supposed to be doing. Eventually, you'll be forced to turn and face your fears. While reading this story, a recurring question kept happening in my mind. I kept asking myself, where are Jonah's friends? At no point in the book of Jonah does it mention his friends. He didn't have anyone on the dock saying, didn't God tell you to go that way? And you're going that way? So I have to ask, do you have friends in your life that encourage you to walk in the direction that God is calling you? Without these right relationships in our lives, it's easy to find ourselves walking in the wrong direction. We can assume Jonah's friends weren't on the boat with him, because what kind of friend would throw you over the boat in the middle of a storm? We can safely say they weren't Detroit Lions fans, because if there's anything we know, it's how to go down with a ship. No friends on the dock, no friends on the boat, and running in the wrong direction from something Jonah was called to do. And maybe at times you, like me, feel like Jonah, knowing what you should be doing, but finding yourself running in the opposite direction. I look out here today and I see so much talent, so many gifts, yet sometimes we choose to stay on the bench. For legitimate reasons or not, we're scared to get in the game. To use our talents for something bigger than ourselves. For whatever reason, we sit on the bench, scared to use our gifts to help others. I feel like my hesitation was legitimate. I was next in line to take over the company I was working at. The job I had didn't involve any public speaking, which was very great. I felt very confident and competent in what I was doing. Plus, I had a wife and 2 kids to financially provide for, and that weighed heavily on me. And did I mention life was good and calm and very comfortable? But growth rarely goes hand in hand with comfort. The simplest example I can think of is getting into better shape physically. Now, I've been part of the SDMA CrossFit community for a few years now, and yes, I've missed some decent chunks of time due to injury, but not CrossFit related. And I think I can confidently say that it's a very small percentage of people who actually enjoy working out. I feel like people who say they enjoy working out are like you ladies who say pregnancy and giving birth is the most amazing and enjoyable experience out there. But if you'd stop lying and tell the truth, overpopulation would not be an issue. Working out is the worst for me. There's pain and there's suffering. And to make it worse, the gym is full of people stronger than me. Humility became my friend, and I would swallow my pride, and I would go back for more to my CrossFit community. And I'm thankful for them pushing me to be better physically. And I need that push, or I would sit on the couch and I would drink Mountain Dew and eat Sour Patch Kids and watch Netflix and stay exactly the same. I have to tell you, when my wife was proofreading the script, she wrote a big amen over that, which was very convicting. My second question for you this morning is, do you have friends in your life that challenge you to be better spiritually, relationally, or physically? How can we expect to become better at anything by doing absolutely nothing? When we don't have friends pushing us to be better versions of ourselves, and when we aren't challenged, we remain exactly the same. Life change happens in these relationships. A true friend is in the business of getting into your business. Do you have a friend like that? A true friendship is when you get to the point where you can ask me for help, and I can do the same in return. And those friendships take time and investment to create. You need something, how can I help? But now I have to ask you for help? I struggle with that part of friendship. I love being the guy that you can call for anything at any time. I love helping. I love fixing things. I love stepping into a crisis. But I have a hard time allowing others to help me. And I'm pretty sure that's a lesson God was teaching me last year. Receiving help has always been hard for me. As many of you know, I was in a pretty serious car accident last fall. The short version is, I broke my femur, I collapsed a lung, had a concussion, something called compartment syndrome. I think we have a picture of that. I'm just kidding, you guys are sick. We would never show that here. What kind of church do you think this is? Oh man, you should Google it though. Needless to say, I was out of commission for a very long time. Last week, Jeremiah spoke about the idea that God is our helper. He doesn't promise us a pain-free or problem-free life. But he does promise us that he will be with us through every storm we go through. We will stumble and we will fall, but God is still with us through everything that happens, and we'll never stumble alone. God sometimes shows up with skin on. God showed up for me and my family. God, it's hitting me early. Through me and my family, through those of you who visited us in the hospital. For those of you who mowed my grass, who dropped off meals. God, you guys love lasagna. You make good lasagna. For those of you who snowblowed my driveway. Who sent call after call and text after text. And it hurt my pride, but I accepted it. And we might not have made it without your help. So, again, I will say, a true friend is in the business of getting into your business. You might be asking, why do I need these types of friendships in my life? Life is good and calm and comfortable. Plus, many of us are in the thick of parenting young kids, and there's just not enough time in the day to invest in those types of relationships. Well, I'll answer that question for you. I believe that most of us are either in a storm, coming out of a storm, or heading directly back into a storm. Now, you might say, that really sounds dark and pessimistic. Can't you be a little more positive? And I am 100% positive that this life will be full of problems. Jonah chapter 1, verse 4 says, "But the Lord hurled a powerful wind over the sea, causing a violent storm, and it threatened to break the ship apart." Maybe we find ourselves in a storm like Jonah did, God loving us enough to send a storm to get our attention. I believe that storms are a chance for us to rely on God and our family and friends in hopes that we can grow through them. Life is full of storms, mountaintops, and I don't think there's anything unique about my storm. I've seen your prayer requests. Many of you are going through harder situations than me right now. And if I'm not careful, I catch myself comparing storms. And I think we all do that, don't we? We all compare losses. Whose storm is worse? Yours is worse than mine, so I'll just stay silent and suffer alone. When we compare losses, we make winners and losers. But I think if we're honest, we can all agree that all losses are bad. Losses are ever the same. Loss is loss, pain is pain, suffering is suffering, and no two losses are the same. So I don't think we should ask whose loss is worse. Instead, we should ask, how can we grow through our suffering? There's a verse in James that I've always struggled with. It's James chapter 1, 2 through 4. It says, "Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing." Last fall, Ashley and I were hitting our stride. Life was becoming good and calm and comfortable again. Our relationship had never been better. We were becoming a true partnership. We had balance. We knew our roles. Life was great. Kids were doing awesome in school. I was losing weight and getting physically stronger. Physically stronger for me means I was finishing the workouts consistently before the grandmas and most, but not all, of the pregnant ladies at CrossFit. The morning of the accident was like most mornings. I worked out, I came home, I got the kids ready for school and dropped them off. I then drove to church and grabbed the truck and headed to Home Depot to pick up materials for the Gaga pit for the youth. They say approximately 1/3 of all car crashes occur within 1 to 5 miles of where the driver lives. 1 mile from church, 2 miles from home, the accident happens. I wake up in the ER at North Memorial. My wife met me there. She walks into a doctor saying, "We've done a CT scan and there's no brain damage." So now I have proof that there's no damage in my brain. It's in the doctor's report. Well, to be honest, they use the words non-remarkable, but I was told that was a good thing. So I'll beat you to the punch and I'll say, she is a real doctor, she has real credentials, and her word is gospel to me. And I'm going to hold on to that report, and that's something you can never take away from me. These verses in James still made no sense to me as I lay in the hospital with my leg in traction, breathing into a vice to keep my lung from collapsing. Being told how close I was to losing my life and my family, I found myself asking, how is this an opportunity for great joy? How is this a chance for me to grow? I thought I'd learned this lesson. No thanks, God. It was a few days and a few surgeries later that Ashley was able to get the kids to the hospital. I remember the kids walking into the room, eyes big as saucers. Benji, my protector, leading the way. Addie, my comforter. Evie, the hurricane, just tore apart that hospital room in minutes. I think the weight of being the only boy in the house was getting to Benji, so he was the first to come to my bed. He climbs in bed and he says, "Dad, are you okay?" And I say, "Yes, I'm okay." He says, "Were you alone in the truck?" Again, I say yes. And he says something that I'll never forget. He goes, I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry you were alone, and I wish I was with you." Because Benji at 6 has realized what most of us adults deny, and that's being alone in a storm is a scary and dangerous place to be. But like that, I had found my joy. I had found joy in the fact that my family was not with me in that accident. And the verses in James became real to me. I can endure this, and I can grow through this storm, but I don't have to grow through this storm. I don't have to go through this storm alone. So let me tell you this, having the right people in your boat will get you through the storms faster. So who do you have in your boat? Do you have friends who remind you who you are, even when you forget? If you can't think of a Christ-centered friend who's willing to walk through life with you, willing to push you to be spiritually better or relationally better or physically better, if you can't think of a friend like that, that's why we have groups here at Westbridge. And I get it. Investing in those friendships and being vulnerable is not the most comfortable thing to do. And cultivating those friendships takes time and effort. But having these friendships ready to go for when life storms hit are priceless. Having people who knew me and knew my kids come into my hospital room and see me bruised and broken, stitched back together, high as a kite, hug my family and tell them everything's going to be okay. We got you. Guess how much that meant to me. And those relationships weren't made on Sunday mornings, not here in the lobby. They were made in small groups and one-on-ones and by consistently showing up to each other. We've all heard the term Sunday best, and that's what I see this morning. I see you all in your Sunday best. I have no idea if your marriage is struggling, if you're having issues parenting your kids, if you're struggling with mental health, or if you just lost a job. I can't tell that from a handshake or a hug in the lobby before or after the service. If you've spent any time here at Westbridge, you'll probably heard it say that not everybody needs to know your story here, but someone should. One of the things I love most about Westbridge is I think this church is a place where it's okay to show our limps. Now, I'm not talking about a physical limp, because for me, that's easy. There was no shame in being in the accident or people asking how I'm healing. And I wasn't the only one with physical health issues last year. Organically, a small group of people formed of people recovering from surgeries last year, checking in on each other every Sunday, and it was awesome. What I'm asking is much harder. I love that Westbridge is a place that you can bring your brokenness and your struggles and feel no shame. But I want to go beyond that. I want there to be people in your boat helping you through life storms. And Westbridge is a church where it's safe to show your limp. I know what you might be saying, enough. We get it. Shattered femurs hurt and you limp. You might have noticed that there has been an addition and a subtraction from our latest family photos. We had a boxer named Jax when we moved here. I gave him to Ash 6 months before we got married. This dog was the best. As I said before, he was handsome and he was loyal and he was a protector. He picked up on emotion and he comforted you. He loved everyone except the mailman. He would have killed the mailman. Also, for the record, he was a worthless swimmer, but now I feel like you have a complete picture of Jax. About 8 months after moving to St. Michael, Jax started limping. This wasn't unusual for our dog, who loved to run through the trees while looking behind him to see how far ahead he was of the other dogs chasing him. We took him to the vet, and to our surprise, the vet told us he had cancer. And not only did he have cancer, but it had progressed so far that they couldn't do anything about it. They said maybe if they'd caught it sooner, there would have been a way to treat him. But he'd only been limping for a couple days before we took him in. The vet told us that dogs are incredibly good at hiding their pain. By instinct, they are pack animals, so they hate to show any sign of weakness. It was against his nature to show his pain. Jack's hiding his limp allowed a cancer to spread. In his case, it would prove to be fatal. He hid his limp until it was too late. And now he's in dog heaven, where there are endless fields to run in, and not a single cat to be found. Because all dogs go to heaven, which of course means all cats go to. Hey, so let me close by saying this. Who in your life knows your limp? Everyone's limp looks different. And I think all of us have one. Some are just better at hiding it than others. It takes real courage and vulnerability to allow other people to see your struggles and your storms and your weaknesses. Nothing good comes from hiding your limp. You need to have friendships in your life who see you for exactly who you are, and they still choose to love and accept you while challenging you to be better. Someone should know the storms you're in. Someone should know the mountaintops you're celebrating. Life change happens in these relationships. Growth happens in relationships. And we need authentic, accountable relationships with others in order to grow spiritually, relationally, or physically. The problem with society today is that we've never been more connected and yet more isolated at the same time. Then you throw social distancing and COVID on top of that. We have replaced relationships and conversations for emojis and comments. Thousands of people stalk our lives, hundreds of people like our photos, yet no one knows the storms and struggles we're in. We don't often show our storms or valleys on social media because there we only post the highlights. We rarely show the storms and valleys on Sunday mornings. We rarely show our limp. And we make everybody believe that we're okay, but inside, we're drowning in a storm. So what are you going to do with your time left? Tomorrow is not promised to anybody, and that's a lesson I learned almost too well last fall. James chapter 4, 13 through 17 says this: "Come now, you who say, 'Today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there, and trade and make a profit.' Yet you don't know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, 'If the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that.' As it is, you boast in your arrogance, and all such boasting is evil. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him that is sin." I think sometimes we get so caught up in planning for the future that we ignore what we should be doing today. We know what God is calling us to do, but instead of acting on that calling, we stay on the bench because there life is good and calm and comfortable. I just finished reading this book called The 5-Second Rule. The summary is, if you have an impulse to act on a goal or a challenge, you have exactly 5 seconds to act on it, or your brain will kill that idea. I'm challenging you to get some friends in your boat, to stop hiding, to stop running, to turn and face your fears. Pray dangerous prayers like, "Help us find a church where we can put down roots and raise our kids." Chase your dreams. Use your God-given talents. Do something that takes you out of your comfort zone. You might have figured out by now, because you're a smart group of people, that public speaking is not my thing. Give me a smaller group of people where I can use my spiritual gift of sarcasm and humor, and I will shine. But send me up to do this, comfort zone is gone. I'm thankful for a friend and leader like Jeremiah who pushes me out of my comfort zone and challenges me to grow. Remember, growth does not happen in your comfort zone. Growth comes through discomfort, and I don't believe we're called to be comfortable. I don't believe we're called to do nothing and to stay exactly where we are, spiritually, relationally, or physically. What's your next right step to bring you out of your comfort zone? Maybe it's to lead a group. I'd like to challenge you today to lead or host a group next fall. Maybe it's to join a group and start investing in these friendships that will carry you through life's storms. Groups create spaces for people to make these friendships. And these kind of friendships will have a trickle-down effect in your life. Maybe you'll be challenged to be a better spouse or parent or friend. Or maybe you'll be challenged to go on a missions trip or sign up for the Fathers for the Fatherless ride. Or be more generous with your time or your finances. And it may get uncomfortable. But remember, growth and comfort rarely go hand in hand. And please don't tell me you're unqualified of leading. I'm pretty sure one of the reasons Jeremiah hired me was so that he can point at me and say, see, we really do believe God uses the unqualified and the unworthy, the weak and the broken. And he goes on and on and on. Like, we get it. The Bible is full of stories of God using the unqualified and the unworthy for his purpose. So before you disqualify yourself, listen to these words from Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians 12:10. Therefore I take pleasure in weakness, in injuries, in necessities, in persecutions, and in distresses, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. There are seasons in our lives where we will need a shoulder to lean on. There are seasons in our lives where we will need to be carried. And there are seasons in our lives where we can be that shoulder and where we can carry the weak and the broken. You can take out your phones now. This is all COVID's fault. We are paperless. But if you find yourself in one of those categories, wanting to lead a group or wanting to invest in those friendships and relationships, you can text the word groups to 763-296-2880. Remember, right now, your brain is trying to kill that idea, that challenge, and keep you right in your comfort zone. So again, you can text the word groups to 763-296-2880. As Jeremiah comes out to close, I want to say thank you for being here this morning. It's great seeing you guys again. Also, if you have someone who's been there through a storm for you, text them or call them today and just say, hey, thanks for being in my boat.